Hey, hello everybody. I am so sorry. Gosh, that's the second time I've done that. I guess I scheduled it on both uh, YouTube and on StreamYard. So from now on, I'm only going to schedule on StreamYard, and hopefully that will deconfuse me as much as you. Look at this. I'm getting a natural part. That's something that looks like a walrus. Guess I need to gain some weight. Oh well. Anyhow, Apartment Prepper, that was such a fantastic live stream today. Thank you very much for that. That was amazing. So I've subscribed to your Scottish friend and look forward to seeing some of his stuff. Well, let's get into the reversion. So the book opens up basically, and we're talking about a retired law enforcement officer who is in the Kansas City area, and he's driving along, and all of a sudden, poof! Everything electronic stops. No, I'm sorry. He stops in to get some barbecue to take home, and while he's in the barbecue joint, poof! Everything stops, and so he looks outside and notices that cars aren't driving, watches aren't working, the cash register's not working, cell phones aren't working, nothing electrical is working. And so he walks up and he says, "Hey, can I have, I think it's 4 pounds of ribs or something." But he gets a whole bunch of barbecue meat and pays him with $100 cash. And then he goes out to his car and gets his go bag and starts heading home with the meat in his backpack. So this is the reversion. It's Stephen C. Smith's The Stonemont Series, Book 1. And so what do you think enabled Jim Wyatt, the person who is talking, who this experience is going on for, what enabled him to basically survive and ultimately get home to his ranch, which the series is named after. His ranch is called Stonemont. So what are the things that enabled him to go from that chaos, that pandemonium, all the way home, about 30 miles away in Kansas? I still have the notes I took, so that's good. Hello, Tyler, and welcome. His training, yep. A couple of things that I think are key that we need to heed and pay attention to. Remember, he paid $100 cash for the meat. So number one, he had a lot of cash. Remember, credit card machines aren't working. He walks down a little bit and he sees I can't remember what it was. I think it's some sort of an antique store. And he finds a bicycle, a mountain bicycle that he buys for $40. So he goes to, first he goes to his truck, he gets his backpack out, he gets his extra pistol out, he gets a couple other things out and puts them all on. And another guy drives by in an old pickup truck. It doesn't say the make, but an old pickup truck that's still running. And they have a quick chat. And he says, "What do you think happened?" He says, "I think it was an EMP." About, "What do you think?" He says, "Yeah, I agree." And so then Mr. Wyatt continues on. He finds this place evidently he's traded there in the past, and he buys a mountain bike for $40. So we now know, number one, that Mr. Wyatt had $140 at least in his possession. Then remember, he goes back to his car and gets his go bag, as he calls it, or I call it a get home bag. They specify exactly what he fills it with. He calls it a just in case bag, and he puts in it 4 1-liter water bottles, his extra personal defense and ammunition, and then from there he goes and buys a mountain bike. Now, also included in here are some other things. So probably the key things that I take from that are that he had cash on him. And I don't carry that much, but I do carry a little bit of cash. And he had his self-defense, and then he had his get home bag. I do have my get home bag still in my truck. Matter of fact, my wife commented the other day. We went to Helen. We went somewhere the other day, and she looked in the back seat, and I've got, my trauma first aid kit, and I've got my get home bag, and I've got several other things back there. And she commented that it looked like a vagabond lived back there. But anyhow, that's some of the things you want to have. Well, he's going on home. He's only about halfway home, and he runs into a town, and everything is kind of messed up, and the street lights aren't working, nothing's working, and he comes across a police chief, a sergeant, and a public works official. And so he starts bantering back and forth with the public works official, with the police chief, and the police chief looks at him and says, "Are you carrying?" And he says, "And what about it?" And he says, "Well, I'll take those weapons from you." And he says, "No, you won't." And he said, "Kansas is an open carry state, and I have a right to have them." He says, "Well, this is an emergency." And then Mr. Wyatt kind of has this confrontation with the chief, and he says, "I used to work the job," and he tells the county where he used to work it, and he says, "And I know chiefs like you. You got your rank by paperwork and kissing butt." And he goes on and kind of derides him a little bit, and then he looks at the public works official. He says, "And how about this? Is it right?" And so he said, "We have." Hi, Tracy. He says, we have some priorities. And so a really important thing that he points out right here is the priorities I think we all need to put in place. And that is, number one is our family. We've got to take care of our family first. And then number two, our community, and then our neighborhood community. And then number three, the greater neighborhood, the greater area around us. So you kind of work in concentric circles. And you'll find this to be a common theme in the book. Start with your family, expand out to your neighbors, and then out to the greater community. No, he didn't show fear at all. He stood up to that police chief, just smack dab. Thank you, Aquarun Girl. And he also talks about, there's going to be chaos coming, probably within 72 hours. And are you prepared to handle it? And he says, I'm reading Canadian Preppers is just going live with a breaking news. Russia declares an emergency. and I saw the declares emergency. I thought that was a comment, but yes, the police chief declares an emergency and tries to use that authority to take the gun from Jim Wyatt and is unsuccessful. But anyhow, he tells the public works official, this is what's going to happen. And he tells the sergeant, and this other police officer is over there, and he says, "Well, where do you live?" And he says, "Well, I live in Missouri, about 30 miles from here." He says, "And you need to go home and take care of your family." He says, "So chief, you're going to let him have the four-wheeler and go home, take some stuff home. And if everything's okay, he'll bring it back. And if it's not okay, then at least he's home to take care of his family, because you aren't going to have enough officers to control what is going to happen." And so the chief goes, "Okay, he can have the four-wheeler and take some stuff with him. And if nothing happens, then he can come back." Yes, absolutely. So when people, let me put that up there for you. It's a great comment. So during that initial stage of pandemonium is your best opportunity to get things done. And he even brings this up later when he talks about scavenging. Okay, so then he gets home, everything is fine. And then we kind of switched the story a little bit to his nephew, Christian. And Christian is working as a security guard in a hospital. And then there's an EMT there by the name of Mike. So when Christian realizes what's going on, he has a confrontation with the CEO of the hospital. Then he goes and grabs his get-home bag out of his car, and he has a long-barreled self-defense tool. And he comes upon Mike, the EMT, and Mike has already changed into his hiking boots and has his bag on his back, and he has a long-barreled rifle as well. And they kind of introduce each other and get to meet each other, and they decide to travel together. Yes, absolutely. People are going to be, especially information. Those who have information will be king. And so then Mike and Christian begin their trek back. Now they're walking, so it takes them 3 days. Well, during their walk, after they're waking up one morning, Mike wakes Christian up and points down at the road, and they see this car on a road, and the car is stalled, and there's a Jim. What's Jim's last name? No, I think it's Bill. Bill Garner, his wife Ann, and his daughter Tracy. Now, Tracy just was in college and was looking for, her parents went up there to pick her up and take her home. And so, as Mike and Christian are watching this, three guys show up, and they're just they're ransacking another car about a quarter of a mile down the road, and they come up to the Garners, and so they began accosting Ann and Tracy and slapping Mr. Garner, Bill Garner, around. So Mike and Christian go down and relieve them of, save the women, let's say. And then after they save the women, they ask Bill Garner what he wants to do. And unfortunately, Bill Garner is a judge. And he says, I spent my whole life at first as a trial attorney and then as a judge. And so I don't know what the appropriate thing to do here is. And so Mike and Christian say, well, we do. And so first they shoot each one of them in the groin and let them suffer for a while. And then they give a pistol to Jim. And Jim then shoots the one guy in the head, and then shoots the second guy in the head. And then his wife, Ann, asks for the pistol, and she shoots the guy that was about ready to rape her. And they leave him there. And so my question to you about this scene is, this is probably, and I think this is kind of a theme throughout the book, is in a world without rule of law, how do we handle these things? We're going to find that even minor crimes, I mean, do you banish people? Do you punish people? Do you physically punish people? Do you execute people for high crimes and misdemeanors? I mean, how do you handle a situation like this, in if there was a world without rule of law? And I think that this comes to fruition again later on. There's a group of motorcycle people who are at a strip joint about 5 miles away from Rosemont, and they're coming up the road. And so when Mr. Jim Wyatt is briefing his scouts, he says, remember, we don't have the capacity to handle prisoners. So what did he mean by that? And that all falls into this context of what will the world be like without rule of law? Absolutely. Yep. That's a very valid response. Absolutely. And Tyler, I think you've hit the key there. I think that, most of us have lived in this world where the law will take care of it. The judge will take care of it. If they need to go to prison, they'll go to prison. They'll serve their sentence, come back. And most of us are unfamiliar with what's going to happen. And so, if we build stocks and pillories, like they did back in the 16 and 1700s, then is that going to work? If we paint something on their forehead, like the Scarlet Letter, I mean, is that going to do any good? I mean, what are we really going to do without rule of law, and how is that going to determine our futures? Well, that unfortunately, Department Pepper, you are absolutely right. There are those who commit a crime and are back out on the streets within an hour. Absolutely, you can absolutely look at it that way. That's a very valid point. That they were protecting the lives of other people, and so because of that, then we have the 5 of them proceeding on to Rosemont. Okay, so the next one is later on, as Rosemont is beginning to grow, and there's an exchange there, and so Jim Wyatt takes Mike, and it turns out Mike is an ex-Marine, and so his rifle, he's a sniper. He's an EMT and a sniper, and he takes him down in the basement, and he has a bunker, a Faraday bunker, and shows him everything he has down there. He has security systems, he has solar panels, he has low voltage lighting, he has security monitoring systems, he has he has an arsenal and all kinds of other stuff. And so my question to you there is, how well are you prepared as far as having your stuff taken care of? Absolutely, Pat. Take your time. Pepper Camper, welcome. You want to be on? Yeah, and so I just brought it up. This is my Faraday bag, and I'll put a link later on. You can get on Amazon. This is the 5-liter one, and it's only about just a little bit more than a gallon. So in here, I can fit my solar charging system, one of my solar batteries, and then my GMRS, FRS walkie-talkies, and my ham radio, and that's about it. Oh, and I have the emergency solar charged, hand crank charged radio in it, but that is nowhere close to a bunker. I mean, everything else I have electrical. If there is an EMP or a CME, I'm kind of, going to suck. Yes. Yep. And make your home defensible. Absolutely. Some other things you can do if it's your home and not an apartment is make sure you plant rose bushes or something like that, some sort of stinging bush directly underneath your windows to impede anybody coming in. Yes, water is going to be a major concern. And they talk in the book about, I think they had 3 250-gallon tanks elevated so that they could have gravity powered water. But I think that's the one thing we all suffer with. And that's one of the key things that in our Tuesday group, Belko Selko Begovic talks about when you choose your bug out location, make sure there's access to water. Yes. Yeah, that's great. In 2021, I believe it was April, we had our own Snowmageddon. And as a matter of fact, and so we had things going pretty good here. I was well prepared for that compared to others. I did make one big mistake, and I have to admit that. Someday I'll do a video on all of my prepping mistakes. I had both a 5 kW gas generator and I had a 5 kW solar generator. And so I set both of those up in the backyard, and then I was getting ready to run the cords. And I said, wait a minute. In order to get the power from the backyard into the house, I have to leave a door open to run the cord through. And so when I run the cord through an open door at 7 degrees, that's not the wisest thing. I may be letting more cold air in than what I'm heating. So, had to come up with an electromechanical way to handle that in the future. But we have the whole house is on battery power now, so that's fine. Let me catch up here. Fortifying your camp is an excellent idea for our home, etc. And then let me come down here. The best bug out location I thought about is a houseboat. Bugging out on the water. I think not too many people would do this. I keep watching the yacht channels, and something like a 100-foot motorhome, motorboat, houseboat, whatever you want to call it, yacht, luxury yacht, looks perfect. But gosh, those things are $4.2 million, and I just don't have that kind of money or credit available to me. But no, I think that would be my idea. Is can I get a nice little yacht, motor yacht with a with solar system, and because you can't run your generators all the time. But that would be my idea. Okay, next one. When they started talking about hunting and hunting animals for food, for sustainable food, um, Pat, you are, and I think that's the whole crux of this book is getting people into that mindset of, the world has changed and you've got to do what you got to do to survive. And the other side is going to be ruthless, and they're going to come take what they want any way they can. And the only way you can survive is to be just as ruthless back. As a matter of fact, I was Stephen Smith, the author, put out a video today, and it was, how do you handle these werewolves that are popping up on YouTube saying that they're just going to come take your stuff? And he said, whatever you do, the first one you get, make a memorable action so that nobody else wants to have the same fate. And so that's absolutely right. We're going to have to do the same thing. Well, I think we will feel guilty. There is a morality that I think that, even in combat, you're against an opposing enemy whose sole job is to kill you, and your sole job is to kill him. And when you do, there's still this moral uh, thing that overcomes you, and that's why we currently have 27 suicides a day from veterans. Is you've pulled the trigger, you've killed somebody else, and even though you try to justify it as being in combat, killing another human being is something that is not natural. Man was not intended to kill each other. And that's a great idea, Prepper Camper. And it's number one. I was thinking, Helen and I were talking about it, and my favorite place on earth is the Gila National Wilderness in New Mexico. In the Gila National Wilderness, they have the cliff dwellings and everything else. And I surveyed the south bank of the Gila River with the National Geodetic Society between my senior year in high school and freshman year in college. And it's just so pristine, so beautiful. And there are no vehicles allowed off the roads. So if you get 3 to 5 miles off the road, uh, we were using MEP spinners and casting upstream. We were catching a good rainbow trout or brook trout every other cast. And it's just a great way. So I agree. A cave in an area like the Gila Wilderness would be fantastic. No, I haven't seen that. You'll have to put a little bit down there about it for us, Apartment Prepper. Yep. And you probably have about 72 hours for that to happen before people realize that now the world has changed and they've got to adapt to it. I I'm a very profound believer in James 2 verses 14 through 24. And it says, O vain man, dost thou not know that faith without works is dead, being alone? What doth it profit, my brother, if a man come to you naked, destitute, in need of food and clothing, and you say unto him, Depart, be filled with the Spirit, go in peace, notwithstanding you give him those things which are needed. Show me your faith by your word, and I will show you my faith by my works. Dost thou not know that faith without works is dead, being alone? I make plans. I buy stuff solely to give away. And if people come and ask, I will be happy to give. If people come to take, I will not be happy to give, and I will defend what I have. And I think that's the big difference. Yes, he did. He did a good job talking about that. Yeah, I think number one, we're going to try to lay low and avoid the situation in the first place. And Selko Begovic talks about making your home look less than. That's the book we're talking about on Tuesday nights, and he talks about making your home look undesirable or already rampaged. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Uh, and to be honest with you, the first time I went deer hunting, I think the deer stared at me and pled for its life. I just couldn't do it. So I'm a failure at deer hunting. I have Tyler. I did a video on communications here, probably about a month ago. But there's all kinds of stuff. As a matter of fact, one of the things I put in that video is one of the last questions we're going to do on this book today. It's an exchange between Naomi and her aunt Carol, and we'll get into that. And I think you are absolutely right, Pat. And I don't like burying caches simply because I dug one up inadvertently. But it's just too easy for somebody else to accidentally, if not intentionally, dig up what you've stashed. So that part of it I disagree with. However, I think there's an awful lot of people who think they're going to survive by hunting and fishing when SHTF. Now, on my Facebook page, probably about 5 years ago, because I've only been on YouTube with this channel for, oh gosh, maybe 6 months. My other channel I started back in oh gosh, 2001. Hurdy Burke helped me get founded in 2001. I have one prepping video on that channel. But anyhow, uh, I asked a question and I said, because the discussion was around knives. And I said, what is the best knife to skin a trout? To scale a trout? And these guys argued for almost, gosh, a long time, arguing over which knife was best to scale a trout. And I finally said, hey, guys, you're going to die because you don't scale trout. Trout don't have scales. And then the other one is people thinking they're going to go out and shoot and do wild game. Well, I think most people don't know how to field dress or butcher wildlife, and then they don't know how hard it is to track and shoot them. And then the other issue becomes one of they don't know how to preserve it once they get it. It's going to be just a one-time thing. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of people out there thinking they're going to do something and they won't. My best example is dove during dove season. So that happens usually in April and then again in October. The dove fly through this area on their migration, and so I don't know if you've ever eaten a dove, but it takes three to feed me a meal. So that would mean that for my family, with my daughter and son-in-law and the grandkids, I'd probably need a dozen dove to feed everybody. So if I'm a perfect shot, I kill a dove every shot with a shotgun, then I need 12 shells per day in order to feed my family one meal. And if I want to do three meals, that's 36 shells a day. Now multiply that out times 365 days for a year. And I don't think people have really, thought this out as how they're going to provide their family with stuff. So I won't be fishing on the side of the bank. I've got a cast net. I'll use a net to fish. I won't be out shooting hunting. I'll use snares and traps instead, and then just go make my circuit and get what I have. But I think that's going to be a good thing. Let me see here. And there will be plenty of others trying to, oh, you aren't kidding. I think people are going to be shooting each other, to be honest with you, out in the forest. Yep. Yep. Yeah, we are in total agreement, Tracy. Total agreement. Okay. So let me see what I have for the next one. See, it's easier when I can do the banners ahead of time like I did, but then I deleted the wrong channel. But why did they start hunting deer further away from, why do you think that Jim told all the people, don't hunt close to Rosemont, hunt further out? Why would he have given them those instructions? I wouldn't, Tyler, to be honest with you. I have no plans of going out hunting. If I do, it's going to be either setting traps or it's going to be, net fishing rather than with a. Do you realize that a professional bass fisherman in a tournament spends 8 hours trying to catch 3 big bass? So do you have the luxury to go fishing for 8 hours to try to catch enough bass to feed your family? That would be the big question. Absolutely. Tracy, you are spot on correct. But I think the reason why he encouraged them to go out further away, because as you hunt in closer, what you do is you're going to give the other deer or game the impression that coming too close to you is going to be dangerous. So you want them to see other areas as danger areas and not real close to where your home is, so that they will congregate closer to you. My replacement for Coca-Cola, it's only 88 cents a bottle at Walmart. Just flavored water, no sugar, no carbohydrates, no calories, no nothing. It is good reckoning. Good reckoning. Well, you did a very good job. Apartment Prepper, you did a very good job of guessing. Because once you kill an animal, what you want to do is you want to what they call field dress them. So you're going to basically rip the carcass open down the belly and get all that stuff out before it starts to infuse inside the animal. And you're going to leave those entrails there. And yeah, that becomes a sign to other animals that something's been killed there. So they kind of have a tendency to avoid that. 88 cents a bottle, Prepping by Faith. It's a fantastic, and it's 1 quart, so 32 fluid ounces. They have all kinds of flavors, but I get the black cherry and the wild cherry. So true. Or firecrackers. Just throw firecrackers in the water. Let's see what we got here. Well, I will tell you that Rainy Day Foods, Nature Valley, and oh, by the way, Nature Valley has free shipping and a 15% discount now through the 4th of July. But Nature Valley has all kinds of meat. I like the meats from Thrive Life. So I've got. There's probably. Oh, let me just see if I can real quickly here. Go to my spreadsheet and go to my meats, and I happen to be on meats. So they have chopped chicken, diced grilled chicken, grilled seasoned chicken, chicken slices, diced ham, pulled pork, roast beef, sausage, shrimp, ground beef, and diced crumbled turkey. So those are all the different meats that are available through Thrive Life. So I get those, and they have a 30-year shelf life. So that's kind of where I get those from. That was on my spreadsheet of what I have. And let's see here. Okay, next question. One of my favorite lines. Okay, remember Tracy is a daughter of Bill Garner. Yeah, I think it's Bill Garner. Bill Garner, the judge. And so she's the one that was being accosted by the three ruffians at the beginning of the story. And so she decides that she's one of those real, feminists. And so they're dividing up and saying how they need to organize the work, and they're trying to organize work and put in. And so they end up putting people into what we might call traditional roles of male versus female. And so Tracy's kind of a young lawyer, just graduated from college, just passed the bar. And so she wants to prove herself. She says, well, I object to the fact that you're putting us in gender specified roles. And I want to be put with the scouts. I want to be one of the bad guys that's going to go out and scout things and be the emergency reaction squad to do all the shooting and everything else. And they say, okay. So they let her do that. And they, Toby wanted you to cook for him. And so, so when she goes out to training for a couple months, she comes back in. And one of my favorite lines in the whole story, and please don't think I'm a genderist, but I just like the way he put it, is she goes in and she says, and she's talking to Jim Wyatt, the owner of Stonemont. She says, well, if you think the scouts can do without me, I think I'd rather go back to where I'm appreciated for what I am rather than tolerated for what I am not. And so she admitted that she didn't have the physical strength or the endurance or any of the other things that some of those bad guys had. And what I mean by bad guys is the more physical type stuff. Oh, I don't know. I am convinced, almost beyond a shadow of a doubt, that soups, stews, and casseroles are going to be what we live off of once that happens. That's basically what we lived off of until the 20th century, the early 20th century. Okay. What is the significant? And now Jim decides that they've grown large enough to where he wants to get everybody into one meeting. And when he gets everybody into one meeting, he lays down the law. He says, okay, here is what we're going to do. We've only got a couple rules, and these are going to be, and he has them written up, and they're posted on the door of the longhouse, which is where everybody lives. And so number one is the 10 Commandments. We're going to live by the 10 Commandments. And number two, we're going to live by the rule that we treat others as, the golden rule, that we will treat others as we want them to treat us. And then he also brings up James 1:27. And the way he brings it up in the book is, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. So he emphasizes that not only is it living up to treating other people, but then going out of your way to help those in distress, especially widows and orphans. And so he becomes a haven for widows and orphans. Tyler. Well, I know one thing. I do know one thing. I'm not too sure too many groups want a Russian code breaker, so I'm going to have to form my own group and be in charge, because I don't think there'll be too many Russian codes for me to break once SHTF. Yep, I'm convinced that that's the way it's going to be. Yeah, and so basically, remember, that's the Shema, and Shema is the Hebrew word for hear. So it starts out, "Hear, O Israel, that you shall love your God your Father, with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your." And we translate it as spirit, but it's actually being is the word that in Hebrew, and so that's basically from the Shema. He says, and then Jesus says, and beyond that you love each other as I have loved you. All right. I've got you. You want my address? You come in here. Central Texas is hot, but it's good. Page 2. I think your skills as a medic or as a nurse are going to be extremely critical. Here's one for you. I've asked my physician, and he's a prepper too, but he's in with a group of special forces guys. He's not going to join my group. But I asked him if he would come on with me because I have this thing. Everybody's buying these suture kits and buying these staple kits and everything else. And I said, here's my philosophy, and you tell me whether I'm full of poo-poo or not. And I said, I object to people, untrained people, in a non-sterile environment trying to suture or staple a wound shut, because we're adding 2 puncture wounds every time we put a suture or a staple in there. And so what we're doing is we're tripling the opportunity for infection to set in a non-sterile environment. What do you think, Pat? Am I somewhere close to reality, or am I being a little bit too dogmatic with that? Yes, as a matter of fact, Selko even talks about that. 7 to 15 is an ideal number. Okay, now when scavenging, there's a wonderful video that Stephen Smith put out about the differences between scavenging, scrounging, and stealing. So stealing he gives examples, and he says, when you steal, that's when somebody's hubcap is on the car in their driveway, and you go up and take the hubcap off and keep it for yourself. That's stealing. He says, now scrounging is you see a car and you're not sure if anybody owns it or not, but you take the hubcap. It looks like it's been deserted. You take the hubcap off and keep it for yourself. And then the third one is scavenging, which is it's been a week. The car's been there. Nobody's coming back for it. It looks like the engine's out, and you go and you take what you need off the car. That's scavenging. So I wanted to clarify the difference among. Crazy glue would do extremely well. There's also a what do they call it? New Skin is the medical version of crazy glue that you can use for gluing a wound shut, and that's available at any drugstore or Walmart. New Skin. So when scavenging, Jim gave priorities to the group that they had to go out and look for. So his priorities were first food, then medicine, cleaning supplies, and now they've grown this large community, so they need tents. They want to get everybody a little bit of privacy. So they're looking for tents, blankets, sleeping bags, soap, toothpaste, shampoo, and vitamins. And he says, and never leave behind any weapon or ammunition, even if it's not a caliber that we don't need. And I think the thought process there is you don't want others. There we go. So I think the thing there is you don't want to leave anything behind that others can potentially use against you. So notice first he's talking about, I need some more light. Oh, there we go. So I didn't realize it's gotten dark. First he's talking about sustaining your own survival and then defending yourself as that comes along. And pardon me by faith, you just hit one. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Let me see. Okay, so the next question is, what do you think of the credit system he worked in? So what he did was he called everybody together and he says, here's my thought process. The average family is 4 people. And so 3 meals a day, that's, if each person uses 1 credit to buy food, then 3 meals a day for 4 people is 12 credits. And then we need to have 2 credits per family so that they can buy housing. So the minimum wage for your work, whether you're guard duty, cooking, gardening, taking care of the animals or whatever, is 14 credits for 1 day's work. That's the minimum, so that you can eat and be housed. And what do you think of that? What do you think about a system like that, where you're talking about the equitable distribution of work and giving credits and then rewarding that? They spend their credits for food. So if they want to give up lunch and save up 4 credits for something else, or if they want to work overtime, now notice that they're only looking at 1 person in the family working. So what happens if both work? Now you can start, because they have these semis that they brought in full of clothing and other stuff, nice to have stuff. So then you can use that as you want. Hi, LG. Hi, Arkansas Prepper. Arkansas living. And would you do it any differently, or do you think that's fairly fair to assume that there's going to be one worker in the family, one taking care of the children? Then they also established a school and education system that I think was pretty good. So Jim, the hero in this book, has I think he's 8 years old, 8-year-old son, Aiden. I may be off on the age, but they give him a high-powered pellet gun, and he goes out hunting and he gets a rabbit with his pellet gun. And then Mike and Christian convince Jim that it's time for him to have a 22 so that he can get slightly larger game. And as they're hunting, they're always asking him questions about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, about history and things like that. So they're teaching him through an interrogatory form of teaching. No, I haven't. Let me write that down. Crawford. Lights out. But I will show you something here real quick. If I can find my planner. Where'd you go? I don't know what I did with my planner. Anyhow, the last 2 pages of my planner are filled with books I want to read still. So I'll add that to it. One of the best classes, Tracy, I've ever had was in CERT, and it was Stop the Bleed. And they had these mannequins, and they actually pumped red colored water through the artery, so that you had to reach down inside and feel the artery pulsing, and then begin the process of packing the wound and all that kinds of stuff. So if there is a CERT organization, CERT, and that's the Community Emergency Response Team, if there is a CERT in your neighborhood, please join it. If nothing else, you don't have to go out and respond to the emergencies if you don't want to. They just don't give you the gear to do it if you don't. But it gives you some of the best training that I've ever received in my life. And I think that Stop the Bleed was a fantastic class. Okay, definitely. I'll prioritize it. Thank you, Tyler. Okay, now there's, in every group, there's these malcontents. And so there's this malcontent Kramer, and his wife is kind of a socialite. And so they aren't working. She's kind of busy buddying around with all the women and trying, rouse things up. And he kind of at the meetings that they're having, he's always the one mouthing off, to Jim and wanting to know why they have to work, and he's in charge and all this kind of stuff, giving him a hard time. So later on, not Jim, but Kramer is caught stealing from the warehouse. And he's caught by a guy by the name of Waters, and then another guy, I forget his name. And so he's saying, hey, look what I found. I found a case of whiskey. You can get one too if you don't turn me in. So Waters decides that he's going to be with Kramer and steal some stuff and not turn it in. Well, the other roaming guard, reports it the next day to Jim. I keep knocking this thing off. I get overly excited, I guess. Too much hand action. But the next day, the other guard reports it. So then they have a trial, and they decide, hey, Kramer, you're guilty of theft, and we're going to banish you from the community. And then they tell Waters, not only are you guilty of theft, but you were in a position of trust, and you betrayed us. So they basically take zip ties and tie the two guys' hands together. So Kramer's right hand is zip tied to Waters' left hand, and then Jim Wyatt breaks all the fingers on the right hand of the traitor, and then he sends them out to where they're no longer welcome in the community. And so that's one of those minor crimes we were talking about earlier. We know that for major crimes that may be we may be forced to do capital punishment, but for a smaller crime, how do you punish a smaller crime? How do you and not emote some sort of vindication from the person who's being punished? Absolutely correct, Pat. Absolutely correct. And Selko talks about that too. And he talks about developing a routine. If you want to maintain the morale of a group, get a routine going. And part of that is chores or work or whatever, so that your mind stays busy with survival and not imagining the what ifs or the oh no's. Uh, yes, I loaned mine when I was in physical therapy. I loaned mine to one of the other guys, and he still has my book. I'd like to get it back, but oh well. I'll go to the half price bookstore and see if they can get me a copy. Okay, so then after that, Kramer and Waters go down the road, and that's where they go down to the road to the end of the road, and they go into the strip joint. And there's a motorcycle group there called the Vikings. And evidently, Kramer gets drunk and stabs the son of the leader of the motorcycle group. He gets killed. Waters runs away. Then the motorcycle group, Kramer's told the head of the motorcycle gang, hey, there's this place up there and they have everything. They even, they have a food and garden and shelter and everything else. And then he gets drunk and he gets to fight with the motorcycle gang leader's son, and he stabs him. So they kill Kramer, and then the motorcycle gang does. And then the motorcycle gang, the mom and dad, go up the road to Rosemont or Stonemont. And when they get up to the gate, they want to talk to Jim. And so they say, well, we hear you have a doctor, and here's what happened. They tell him a story about what Kramer did. And they said, and he stabbed our son. And so we need medical help. So they go get the son, bring him up. And then all of a sudden, the motorcycle gang and Stonemont become best of pals. And they heal the son from the stab wound. And so, that's a really good lesson there too, is don't judge people by how they look, because it turns out that these are just people who have regular jobs who ride for pleasure on the weekends and not bikers, as bikers are known. Some semblance of it, absolutely, but I don't think we can codify everything in advance, because some of them we just won't know until they happen. But oh, really? Way to go, Partner Prepper. Yeah, I love them too. Except they won't give me enough money for my books. Here's my opinion on alcohol and tobacco. I know there are people out there that say you have to buy them in order to have something for barter goods. And I did. I bought, I probably have 200 bottles of those little bitty $1 bottles of alcohol that I would trade away. But, my opinion of barter is only 18% of the U.S. population smokes. And so why should I spend money on something now to trade with somebody who needs it, who may not have what I want in exchange for it? And instead of buying something to barter away, why don't I just get what it is that I need more of? If I need canned meat, get more canned meat, instead of saying, well, I'll buy a carton of cigarettes and they'll go stale, and I'm going to trade those for a can of meat at some point in the future. That doesn't make sense to me. So buying things strictly for barter, I don't do that. I don't do alcohol, tobacco, or any of that stuff. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's too much of a chance. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Okay. So then the last major encounter is at an elementary school. Aiden is out hunting, the 8 or 12-year-old boy, and he comes back and says he found some women. And so they go down and check him out, and one of them's dead and the other one's still barely alive. And so they take them up to the house, and they reconstitute the one, help her back to health, and find out that a gang led by Elvin is grabbing women and using them for their own pleasures. And then they've created a nightclub where they force them to entertain other people. Then the other people are bringing in things, which is basically, buying their entrance into the alcohol and the naked dancing and all this other kinds of stuff. And so that leads the entire group to go save all the ladies from Elvin and his gang. And so what they did was they executed Elvin and his gang, and then they made the customers. They waited that night until all the customers came in, and then they said, okay, those of you who are here just to check and make sure that your loved one is still alive, you go this way, and those of you who are paying customers, you go this way. So all the paying customers, they put them in the cages that the girls have been kept in, and they kept them there for 3 weeks, just cleaning up and basically being slaves to the girls. And then they took them home to their spouses and told their spouses, this is what happened to your husband and why he was being held captive. And so we have this cache of all these things that have been spent at the elementary school for their entertainment. We're going to divvy that up amongst all the victims. And we consider your family, to be a victim because your husband was taking what should have been for your family and giving it to Elvin. And I thought that was a unique way of looking at it. And, just think of the people involved. Sometimes, there are other people, innocents, who are hurt inadvertently. I have a drink. I have a glass of red wine with dinner almost every night. When I was little, the doctor gave me a prescription for beer when I was 14. And I was supposed to have a beer a night because I was severely underweight, and that was supposed to help me. So I enjoy a beer. As a matter of fact, when I had MRSA pneumonia and I was hospitalized. I got it when I was working at the homeless shelter, the HR director there. And so my day I was getting discharged after 3 weeks in ICU. Caseworker came into my room and said, "Oh, I've got you in the best Alcoholics Anonymous group in the county." And I said, "I don't need it." She says, "Oh, I understand denial." She says, "But this is the best group. You really need to go." And my wife looks at her and says, "He doesn't need it." And she says, "Oh, come on, just give it a chance." And my daughter says, "Ma'am, Mom and Dad go out for pizza every other week and they split a beer. And that's the extent of Dad's drinking." And she looked at the room number. She says, "Oh, I'm in the wrong room." So yeah, we drink, but we're not totally abstainers, but we're not drinkers either. So a nice in between. So Tracy, if you go to any of my videos, recent videos, it's down. It's in the Amazon links. But if you want to just go straight to Amazon, that's fine. Then let me see. Well, this is book 3. This is the one I'm currently reading, the renewal. But book 1 is the reversion, and it's the Stonemont series on Amazon, Stephen C. Smith. And let me see. Okay, and the last one, I put this interaction. If you remember, I did a video on communications. About a month ago, and in that I talked about the exchange between Naomi and Carol. Now, Carol is half Comanche Indian, and Naomi is 1/4 Comanche. And Naomi's father, it turns out in book 2, is a Texas Ranger in Lubbock. So Naomi and Carol have this tie through the Comanche Indians, and so they're getting up close to the house where Carol lives, and Naomi steps outside, and Carol recognizes her. She comes out, and then she looks at the sun, and then she looks back, and then turns around and walks back inside the house. And so Naomi tells Christian, "Stay here, don't move. I'm going in." So then Naomi goes in, because the sign in Comanche was, if you look at the sun and then go back in, that means the coast is clear. You can come in. And so Naomi now has to go in by herself to tell Carol and her uncle that the guy with her doesn't have her as a prisoner, that he is indeed a good guy. And by going in by herself, it shows that she's not a prisoner. And so then she waves Christian on in. So there's a very unique communication system there that I kind of talked about in my video on communications. So, and I'll end it kind of with one of the, as Jerry and Christian are talking, they're training the scouts and how to scout and how to be good observers of what's going on around the world and what's going on around them. And, the exchange, there's an exchange between one of the students, Jerry, I think his name, yeah, Jerry, and Christian, who's the instructor. And it's a very simple one at night. And I think it's a rule you need to write down and pay heed to. And it says, the first to move is the first to die. Because remember, your cones don't work. Or is it your rod? Your rods don't work at nighttime, only your cones. So that's peripheral vision. So your eyes pick up movement quicker at night than anything else. And so the first to move is the first to die in a nighttime situation. So when you're a scout or you're checking something out, move very slowly, very cautiously, and be aware of that. And let me see if I can't put up the book that we just finished. And I think I got it here. Let me see here. Where's my word? Over here. Okay. Well, I have the one for the next month. We'll do book 2, but you can find book 1 as well with this same link. But here's the link to book 2, which we'll be talking about at the last Thursday in July. So, what do you all think? Good learning in there, or you know, there's a little bit of blood and gore, but I have a feeling that in some cases that may be reality when we, when we take a look at what's going to be happening after SHTF. What are your thoughts? Thank you, Tripping by Faith. Okay. I guess we're well over an hour. Thank you all for bearing with me that long. I really, truly appreciate it. So remember how we close all of our lives is the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So as I do with all of my YouTube videos, remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together because togetherness is the key. And remember James 2. And if you get a chance, just look up 14 through 24. We do have an obligation to feed those who come to our who come to our door seeking food and shelter. Yeah, you are so right, Tyler. You are so right. Yes, get both sizes, 4-inch and 6-inch. And great comment. Well, thank you all for being here. I really, truly appreciate you. And so until next month, remember, on Tuesday nights, we do our nonfiction, which is this book. All these books I have over here. We're reading this one by Soko Begovic and his 3-year ordeal in the Bosnian War and his 1 year in hell. And so he's been there, done that. So it's real life. I've been in SHTF. We do that every Tuesday night. We're going to finish up chapter 3 this coming Tuesday night. And then tomorrow night, Prepping by Faith is doing an interview of one of my favorite people, besides Prepping by Faith. Another one of my favorite people is Van City Prepper. So, and I'm going to be included in that group. I don't know how I earned that status, but I'll try to live up to being equal to the two of those. And then Saturday at 8 o'clock, we're going to do our Grow Your Channel. So all the smaller channels, I ask you to come on. What we do is I have outstanding, superior, the best moderators. And as you come on, they will put a link to your channel on the live feed or on the comments. And then we're going to ask that you subscribe to them and they subscribe to you. And that way we just help each other grow. So that's kind of where we are for the rest of the week. And remember, we're all in this together. So we come out the other side together. Togetherness is the key. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.